You are listening to the Dare to Love podcast with your hosts, Sonica Tinker and Christian Peterson, founders of LoveWorks.
Are you afraid to share your feelings in your relationship when something comes up for you? Is it scary for you to come to your partner and actually say it? One of the comments we receive a lot in our relationship coaching sessions is something like this. People will say, I don't want to say anything to him about how I feel because I don't want him to feel bad or wrong. Or sometimes people will say, I don't want to make it worse. You know, if I say something, then it's going to put this wedge between us. For us women, it is really easy for us to put another person's needs ahead of our own. We're biologically wired to put relationship concerns ahead of our own personal needs. Right? We put the kids before our needs. We put our spouses before our needs. We put our parents' needs ahead of ours. And really, it's how we ensure that our kids are taken care of. And it's also how we make sure we nurture our husbands, our spouses, so they'll love us. They'll take care of us. They'll go out and, you know, in the old days, right, go out and hunt food for us again, day after day, right? It's one of the ways that we ensured our survival. Now, there's a real fear in the background of our animal brain that if we say or do the wrong thing, then our partner might not love us or hunt for us anymore. And in the old days, there was real consequences to that. You know, if our mate didn't go off and hunt for us, we were at risk of dying. And so we get scared. We get scared to talk about what we're really feeling and thinking. But there is a cost to not saying what we feel and what we need. I want you to imagine that you and your partner are looking into each other's eyes and you're melting into this beautiful place of oneness. And there is absolutely nothing blocking this incredible love flow between you. Now I want you to imagine that there's something you want to say that you don't say. And let's symbolize this something as a brick that is now placed between you and your partner. Now, at some point, imagine there's another thing you don't say, and so another brick is laid. Pretty soon there's another and another. Everything you don't say is likened to a brick that is placed between you and your partner, obscuring your vision and your flow of love. And before long, and some of you may have this experience, right? There's so much that isn't said between you that you can barely see each other at all. So instead of having a relationship with your partner, you're now having a relationship with all of these bricks, with this wall, right? With all of the things that you aren't saying. So needless to say, when we begin to withhold, the love we feel gets more and more obscured as well. So our relationship advice is this: say it, don't hold back. You know, to say everything. That's really our best relationship tip. You know, and the best relationship gift we can give to our partners is to be transparent, to withhold nothing, to say it all. Because when we share ourselves completely, that is when our light shines the brightest. It's when we're real, vulnerable, and open that we are the most attractive, and also where we have more possibility for intimacy and connection. Not only that, but our openness and transparency calls our partner to meet us in that same place, hopefully, and to meet us with the deepest of respect and presence. It often calls our partner to hold and protect us as well, especially when we're really vulnerable and real. Now, there are many ways to share and ways not to share. So in this podcast, we're going to go through several tips for how to set up communications with your partner so that you can begin to eliminate these bricks between you and your partner and begin to restore intimacy and connection. And I want to say, while I'm speaking just for ease to talk about male and female relationships, everything we're going to give you here in this podcast is, of course, applicable to any gendered relationship, any sexual orientation relationship. So just bear with me as I kind of speak in terms of women in the context of women and men. So the very first tip to setting up a safe space for you to be able to share your thoughts and feelings is to, first of all, set your partner up to listen to you. The best way to do that is to ask your partner if they'd be open to hearing you without any interruption or fixing, so that you create a safe space for you to be able to just express anything that wants to be expressed. So that's the first thing, is to let your partner know what it is you're needing and wanting, and to set them up to be able to take the time to focus on really being with you. Secondly, you can give your partner a time limit. So I will say in our coaching, one of the things we notice is that men in particular are not as comfortable with and don't necessarily enjoy long sharing sessions that go on for hours like women might. So for you to be able to share with your partner that you would like, 15 minutes, 30 minutes of their time, and give them a limited time frame, and that will help your partner be able to relax more and really be able to be with you if they know it isn't going to go on for way too long than they can handle. 3, let your partner know that you want to share something, and reassure your partner that it's not because he did anything wrong. Promise you're not going to turn your share into a dumping or a complaining session, right? That you're not going to use this as an excuse to, just lob a bunch of, negativity at your partner. This is going to help your partner relax, right? They're going to be able to hear you better when they know that it's your intention to communicate something about yourself and not to make your partner wrong. Number 4. Be as vulnerable and real as possible. Share your feelings of anger, hurt, sadness, fear. And the more vulnerable you are, the softer you are, the more likely your partner is going to be able to meet you with compassion and empathy. I will say that just yesterday I was working with a couple, and I had them start actually by sharing their fear. So this was a couple who began the session by saying that they had a lot of anger and hurt and resentment in the space. And I had them start by sharing what they were afraid of. And often when people start with sharing what they're afraid of rather than starting with what they're really pissed off about, it generally communicates a lot of the same stuff they're pissed off about, but in a softer fashion where it actually allows the other person to be able to hear them, because all of us feel scared. So when I can say, I feel really scared about my needs not getting met, I feel really scared that we're going to be criticizing each other forever. And I don't really like that. It doesn't feel good to me. I don't like who I'm being. When we can share with our partners our fear, it's a little easier to digest than expressing our anger as a starting point. I'm really pissed off at you for not hearing my needs. I feel like I don't matter, and that makes me mad. That is, as a starting point, is more likely to set your partner up to begin to feel defensive or hurt by what it is you're mad about. But when you can start by saying, I'm really scared, then it makes it a little easier. Even though you're saying all of the same stuff, it makes it a little easier for your partner to hear. And in that place, your partner then can also say, as was the case with this couple, right? Your partner gets to touch into their own fears as well, and it can create a point of connection. So, when you're ready to switch roles, for example, as in the case of this couple that I was working with yesterday, when he got to drop down then and share his own fears, Both of them, just from sharing their fears, felt more connected with each other afterwards, rather than more distant, which can often happen when we start with a lot of intense anger and resentment. And it's not to say that you can't start with anger and resentment. I'm just sharing that, that can be another way to go about creating a safe space for you to be able to hear each other. Now, the other thing that's really important, this is number 5, is to use I statements to make sure you talk about yourself. Avoid you statements. When you can say something like, I feel really scared when you leave the room, or I miss feeling really close to you. When I own my own feelings like that, and I talk about my own sadness, my own fear, my own internal experience, the more I can own my own feelings, the more I can minimize your resistance to hearing me and actually inspire your listening and your interest. It goes along here with number 6. And this is something we got from the Hendricks Institute, where they talk about telling the microscopic, unarguable truth. If I say, for example, you don't love me, right? That's both a you statement and it's also an arguable truth, right? The second I say that, my partner can now argue with me about the fact that they do, in fact, love me. But if I say, I'm noticing I feel really scared. There's a knot in my stomach, and I'm thinking that you might not love me. When I can say and own my own experience while also telling the unarguable truth, my partner is better able to not invalidate me, to not want to pick a fight with me, right? My partner is more able to really be with and hear my experience. And I'll tell you, that is something that takes great practice. A lot of us, when we go to communicate our thoughts and feelings, is we have a much harder time staying in our own experience. We have a much harder time owning our own thoughts, our own feelings as ours. This is mine. This isn't yours. To make I statements instead of you statements is really, really important to remember, and will make your sharing experience much easier. Another thing I want to add in here is the importance of being as specific as possible. One of the breakdowns that a lot of people experience when they are in process of sharing is this habitual pattern we have to talk in generalities about how our relationship is, or about how our partner behaves, or about these patterns that we just don't like and we can't live with anymore. And the more general we get in our sharing, the less useful it actually is for the most part. So I'll just say, with this couple that I was working with yesterday as well, I was helping them get really specific in the moment. What is one thing you can do right now to help yourself feel more connected? And one of them said, touch. I said, great. So reach out and touch each other. And they did that. What is another thing you can do right now that would help you feel more loved and connected? And one of them said, being appreciated. And I said, great. So let's just have you both appreciate each other right now. And as I kept walking them through step by step, what can you do right now? What can you do right now? What can you do right now? Right? It opened up places for them to connect. That talking in generalities kept them feeling so distant and disconnected from each other. So that it's really important when we're sharing our thoughts and feelings to be as specific as we can about what happened or what it is we're feeling right now, both emotionally and physically in our bodies, right? I'm noticing tension in my jaw. And to take ownership of our makeups, of our thoughts, our beliefs. I notice I'm making up that you don't love me. I'm noticing myself being afraid that you might leave me. I'm noticing myself making up that you don't care about my own needs. The more we can take ownership, the more we can make I statements, the more we can talk about the microscopic, unarguable truth, the more specific we can be in the moment, the more likely we are to actually create a favorable result when we're sharing our thoughts and feelings. Another thing that's really great when we are sharing our thoughts and feelings is to connect with what it is we're really wanting. Often, what is in the background of every held resentment, right, every withhold, is that we aren't feeling loved and connected and seen and valued. And really, that is what we are wanting more than anything else. Every fight, every withhold almost always has in it, I don't feel close to you. I feel scared. I feel distant. I don't feel seen. I don't feel valued. And so the more we can get real and vulnerable and specific and drop down into really owning our thoughts and feelings and our desires, right? What it is we want, then we can begin to move towards creating what we want. So another thing we can do when we're sharing is actually to just ask for what we want. Would you be willing to touch me right now? Would you be willing to just tell me one thing you appreciate about me? Could we just take 3 minutes right now and just share 3 appreciations each of each other? Would you be willing to tell me 3 reasons for why you love me and why I'm the perfect partner for you? Would you be willing to say where you have felt given to and supported by me in the last week? Requests like that move you in the direction of what you want is a very, very powerful thing to end our sharing with specific requests that are actually doable. Would you be willing to? Specific action. And I will say that that's one of our favorite ways to make requests. Would you be willing to? Because that hooks their will, and it also begs for a specific response to your question. And you want to make sure anything you ask for, as I already mentioned, right, is specific and actionable right now. Sometimes where couples go awry in making requests is people will say things like, well, I just want you to never withdraw ever again. I want you to not be shut down when I ask you for something I need or something I want. Requests like that are general and are focusing on patterns are not necessarily actionable in this moment and are sometimes too big a chunk for someone to be able to even be able to take to bite off and chew. I don't know how else to say that. It's like it's too big. It's unactionable. But I could say, would you be willing to stay in the room when you get triggered next time? Like that is a specific request that is actionable in that moment. The next time you're triggered, would you be willing to stay in the room with me rather than walking out? Specific requests. Another thing that's really great when we're sharing, and especially when we have a lot of withholds, right? We often have a lot of complaints, a lot of stuff we're upset about, a lot of unmet needs. As I said, a lot of places where we feel not loved and not valued. And sometimes the focus can be when we talk about all of the things that we don't like and that aren't working and that are missing for us, and all of this litany of all these places where we felt hurt and unsupported, ungiven to. So it's really important when we're sharing to make sure we give some attention to what we do want and what we do have and what we do like, so that our partner isn't left feeling like they're unvalued and unseen and unappreciated and like they can't do anything right, and that there's so much here that you're unhappy about that it's impossible for them to be able to fulfill, right? So it can be really helpful in your shares to say, what you do want rather than what you don't want. So instead of saying, I notice myself feeling really angry and hurt every time the garbage isn't emptied, to be able to say instead, I really like it when you take out the garbage every week. It just has me feel so supported. That's a very different way to communicate something I'm wanting, where I say it more in what it gives me and what it produces for me when I get it, rather than saying, I hate it when, I really like it when, and to be able to frame what it is we're wanting in this positive way. And that also has the other person experience more willingness potentially to want to give us what it is we're wanting, to want to give you what it is you're wanting. So a really great thing to include in your sharing is what you appreciate, and to express your requests in not only as would you be willing to, but I really like it when you do this, and add in what it gives you. Add in the great feeling that gets produced for you when that person does what it is you would like more of. When you're complete, thank your partner for listening. Thank your partner for being there for you. Thank your partner for looking in your eyes, holding your hands, listening without interruption. Thank your partner for not getting defensive, for not leaving the room. All of us in relationship want our partners to be happy, right? Our partners want to win. They want to be seen and valued and appreciated just as much as we do. So the more we can acknowledge our partners for listening, the more we can acknowledge them for how present they were with us, the more likely they are going to be to want to listen to us again later. I just mentioned eye contact and touch. Another thing that can be really useful in sharing feelings is to set up intimate space. Now, that is different for different people. So I want to just express a couple of different ways that you can do that. Some people prefer sitting side by side. Sometimes it can feel a little too confronting to make eye contact with your partner while you're sharing. So some people prefer sitting side by side where they're kind of looking forward together and one person is a little freer to go inside and focus in on what it is they want to share. Some people really love sitting across from each other, making eye contact, holding hands, adding a touch can be really great. And sometimes people feel safer making eye contact, feel more connected and more able to drop down and really be with each other. Sometimes people also prefer sitting across from each other or side by side with eyes closed. Sometimes in relationship, we can react to our partner non-verbally, right? So I say something and I watch you roll your eyes, and now I'm triggered about you rolling your eyes, and I now have a bunch of thoughts and feelings that are arising in me from seeing that. And now I am inclined to want to shift my focus onto that reaction and talking about that trigger, or that triggered response might keep me from actually sharing what I want to share. So sometimes people find it valuable to share with eyes closed so that I can really focus on my experience when my eyes are closed, not be distracted by whatever you might be thinking or making up as I go along over there. And I'm freer to actually share without that distraction. So as you go into setting up these these safe spaces to be able to share, it can be useful to also set aside create a structure that feels really good for you, whether it's eyes closed, sitting side by side, sitting in front of each other, and to support yourself to also minimize distractions by making sure you're not going to be distracted by kids or the phone ringing or, whatever else might be wanting to take our attention away from each other. Lastly, and this is important as well, is some of us just don't have good patterns for sharing our thoughts and feelings. We say one thing and our partner reacts, and then pretty soon we're on the reactive track downhill, with both of us feeling totally triggered and more hurt and more angry and more disconnected after than when we started. And it's important to realize that some of us are just less skilled at being able to talk and listen to each other and gain access to all of the love that is underneath every single withhold. So get help from a professional if you find that your sharing actually leads to more distance and defense, or if it just feels too scary to even get started. There are many ways in which a coach or a therapist can help you create safe space for sharing difficult things, and can even help you create the structures so that you are better able and set up to be able to do that on your own afterwards as well. Be gentle with yourselves. All of this takes great practice and skill, and most of us have received very little relationship training. I remember another couple that I was coaching have been so distant for so many years, and they are not accustomed to talking about their feelings at all with each other. They've been caught up in the logistics of work and dealing with aging parents and children. So the thought of sharing anything with each other is particularly challenging. They haven't touched each other in years. There's no sexual or intimate contact of any kind. And so their bodies have become accustomed to this disconnection in their relationship. For them to come together and just share one thing they're afraid of is a huge step. Just being able to hold hands on a walk for 30 seconds is a huge step. Being able to greet each other in the morning with a good morning and a little peck on the cheek is a huge step. So be gentle with yourself and get as much support as you can to move towards your partner, to lean in. And I will tell you that there is nothing richer than having a relationship where you feel safe to share absolutely everything without risk of judgment, make wrong, or disconnect. And when we can responsibly share our feelings, take ownership, and allow ourselves the space to share and set our partners up to win, then we are destined to feel much more connected and loved and free to be ourselves with our partners. And I'll tell you, Christian and I have this practice where we literally share everything, and we share it as it arises. so that we're always dealing with whatever is showing up in this moment. We share about it, talk about it, work it through all the way to completion until we're back in love with each other, so that we never have to have that same breakdown ever again. We never have to have that same conversation ever again. And we give each other the space to have our feelings. And I will say one of the things that really helps us do that is because we are responsible in how we share with each other. We never dump on each other. We never criticize each other. We never blame each other. And because we move that way with each other, it makes it much easier for our partners to be able to really, for each other to hear each other. Just makes it much, much easier. And last thing I will say here as we wrap up, even if your partner messes up and happens to put a you statement in there somewhere, which is bound to happen as we're learning and growing, is you can, as the listener, play with imagining that your partner is talking about themselves in the best way they can. And for you to do the translation for them and not take it personally, that this person loves you, is doing their best to get back to love the best way they know. And the more you can help remember that in yourself, to know that you're a good person, your partner's doing the best they can. And the whole reason for even having this conversation in the first place is to remove those bricks and get you back to love. So as the listener, be sure at the end of a sharing of your partner to thank your partner for their vulnerability. Thank them for their willingness to share their heart and mind and soul with you, and to be willing to step into that uncomfortable place to get you guys back to love. So keep practicing. That is like the most important part here, is just keep practicing, right? Perfect practice makes perfect. It will get easier over time. And if you find yourself getting stuck, get support, get help. Being able to share and listen on a deep level in a way that brings you closer is a skill that you can absolutely learn and develop with support if you don't already know how to do that. Alrighty, blessings on your journey. An honor to be with you. Feel free to reach out for support if you need it. And here's to sharing everything and withholding nothing.
You have been listening to the Dare to Love podcast with your hosts, Sonica Tinker and Christian Peterson, founders of LoveWorks. And hey, if you found this podcast to be useful, would you go ahead and hit the share button and share this with your friends on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or wherever your favorite hangouts are. Thanks so much for sharing the love. And you can find more about our work at loveworksforyou.com. Thank you.